There we are.
Awesome. Okay, welcome everyone. Where we are picking up today is on page 125. And we're on the second full paragraph where it says another principle. So page 125, paragraph 2, another principle. And just to give us all a moment to try to find that page, what we were talking about last week, and as we were transitioning into this paragraph, welcome, page 125, second paragraph, we were talking about gossip. And what do we do with gossip? How do we navigate gossip? How do we not gossip? And I shared my own personal experiences with, the one thing that really got me to not gossip anymore was to make amends for gossiping. Was to, not go and say, hey, I was talking a lot of stuff about you, because when I had people do that to me, I'm like, this is more harmful. But instead to say kind things to their face and be intentional about saying kind things behind their back. We also spoke about, what do I do if somebody brings gossip to me? Well, I can offer, hey, that sounds tough. Let's write inventory about it. Or talking about how we can be helpful to that person. These ways of just sort of transitioning from the problem to the solution. And if you keep bringing solution, people stop bringing problem because they don't want to do inventory. So that's one of those things. And as we transition 125, paragraph 2, we're going to see some other ideas about what to do with gossip. It says, another principle we observe carefully is we do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. By the way, feel free. You want to tell Paige stories? Tell them. Tell them. You want to pass around my number? Pass it around. Like that's just so y'all know. But that's the idea, is like talking about my own lived experience. It goes on to say, we find it better when possible to stick to our own stories. A man may laugh or criticize at himself and it will affect others favorably. But criticism or ridicule coming from another often produces the contrary effect. So one of the reasons we're saying, hey, it's not helpful to talk about other people is because it's not helpful. It doesn't work. It's not effective. But what is effective is to share what my experience has been. To poke fun, not at you, but to poke fun at me. And there's a lot to poke at. And to have that, like that sort of, you can see when people are trying to put other people down, and it doesn't feel safe when we're around people that are doing that. So that's what, and that idea that what are we trying to do? We're trying to be helpful. We're trying to be effective. We're trying to carry this message. We're trying to serve others. So that's what we're trying to do. So members of a family should watch these matters carefully. For one careless, inconsiderate remark has been known to raise the very devil. So I know you guys are all spiritual giants and can't relate to this, but I will let you know that I have some buttons. And when somebody comes around and starts pushing a button and I'm like, they did what? They said, how dare you? I got my little squishy bits that they're poking and that hurt my feelers, which is the clinical term. So it's that idea that we all have these human responses or these areas that we're sensitive to. And so we need to be mindful and considerate of that in other people. I'm not saying let's go be codependent, manage their emotions, but I can be thoughtful and considerate. And in fact, when we talk about being sensitive, it says we alcoholics are sensitive people. It takes some of us a long time to outgrow that serious handicap. Now, when we talk about being sensitive, a lot of times we talk about it through this lens of, crying at like dog food commercials. And I want to be very clear that is not the sensitive that we are talking about when it says alcoholics are sensitive people. And I'll share with you this story because it ruined my day, and if my day had to be ruined, I'm just going to spread the joy. And this happened many years ago. I was at a subcommittee meeting at my old home group, and I was making a joke, and I would joke about like, "Oh, I'm sensitive. Don't you know I'm sensitive?" And I can't remember the context of it, but I'm sure it was a banger. Like, it was hilarious. And I love her. I still know her today. This wonderful woman said, "Did you know sensitive is just a synonym for self-centered?" Oh no, just called me right out. You see, when we talk about being sensitive, we're talking about being centered around myself. We're talking about making things that aren't about me. You know, when you go into a meeting and two people are talking, you walk in, they stop talking, and it's, oh, they're talking about me because I'm that interesting. I'm really not. Really, like, so if they're talking about me, that's good news. That means there's not a lot going on. It's pretty calm if I'm the hot gossip. But they're not talking about me, you know? They're just not. So that's what we're talking about, sensitive. And we talk about that it takes a long time to outgrow that serious handicap. This is a thing that I need to be free of. This is a thing that is holding me back. Self-centeredness is blocking me from this power. And if I'm blocked from this power, it makes sense that if you poke at something that's self-centered, it would raise the devil, right? That side of myself that I don't want to show other people would pop out. And so I've got to outgrow it. And how do I outgrow it? Well, I'll tell you, again, I'm not perfect. I have my moments. But how I've begun to have freedom. Actually, I don't know if I shared, I'm sure I've shared this story. I'll show you this story. And you can tell me if you've heard it before. and if you are like, I've heard it before and I'm mad at you, hopefully I'll be able to not be sensitive about that. This was a number of years ago. And there was a guy that was coming to my home group at the time. And he sort of like, I stopped seeing him. And I hadn't seen him around, and I was outside of a different meeting. This was back when I smoked, and I was having a cigarette with my friend, and I was like, you know, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while. Do you know where so-and-so's been? Now my friend was the squishiest little, most wonderful person, and my friend made a face, one of those, faces. And I'm like, oh, and again, the spiritual giant that I am, I'm like, there's some information. Let me pull it from you. What is that face about? Couldn't let it go. I had to poke at that till I got the info. And my friend shared with me, well, and so let me paint the picture. Let's say that person is person A. And my friend said, well, person A told person B, who told me that he didn't like you and thought you were full of self-pity. And I point that out because there were some threads of gossip in there. I know, it's like, everybody's talking about me and how he doesn't like me. And I will tell you, no worries, you grab your dinner. We're just glad you're here. And so I had this moment, and I had this reaction. It was this reaction of, oh my goodness, I don't care. I don't care. And he was right. I really was full of a lot of self-pity. Like, yeah, like that. Now, I did not think that freedom was possible. You know, when you go to the rooms and you hear people say, what other people think of you is none of your business. And then we smile and nod because we don't really want to get into a conversation. But in our heads, we're like, yeah, but how does that happen? Of course, it's my business. I'm talking about me. I'm my business, me. I mean, not you guys. You guys are real spiritual and you're like, I'm letting go and letting God. But me, I'm stuck in like, no, what did they say? And I'm stuck in me. And I know that feeling when I think people are talking about me and people don't like me and my stomach wants to fall to the floor. Like, that's who I am, and that ability to be like, oh my goodness, I genuinely don't care what this guy thinks about me, and he's got a fair point. Like that was freedom that I did not ever think possible. And how did I get there? I couldn't try to think my way there. I couldn't try to focus on just, I don't care what people think. I don't care what people think. All I did was seek a deeper relationship with the God of my understanding through the steps. All I did was dive into this course of action as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. And as a result of that, like, it literally snuck up on me. I didn't know I had that freedom until I was like unbothered in the train of gossip. And by the way, this is funny. I was like, how long, my poor friend, how long ago did that happen? My friend was like, oh, like a year ago, 9 months, a year ago. My poor friend just holding on to that. Oh, so funny to me. But I couldn't have done that on my own. And for me, that is always another example of God, higher power, the creator, the spirit of the universe, doing for me that which I could not do for myself. And here, let's go bottom of page 125. Many alcoholics are enthusiasts. Woo! How'd you know? Now, I will say the word enthusiasm. Somebody can correct my etymology, but I believe it is Greek in origin. And the meaning, I have clear. It is to be filled with God's Spirit. That filled with God's Spirit. And it's one of those things, like, when I'm connected, I can't not be enthusiastic. You know, sometimes when I do talks, I'm like, listen, I couldn't tone it down if I wanted to. So it's a you problem, not a me problem, which is very spiritual. But that idea that many alcoholics, enthusiasm, that is a God-given quality. Now, here's what I will say. It says they run to extremes. Yikes! I wasn't expected to be called out so late in the book. Yikes! And it says, at the beginning of recovery, a man will take, as a rule, one of two directions. Now, when we talk about at the beginning of recovery, I want to put that sentence and this chapter back into context, because this is very important. When we kicked off the chapter, The Family Afterward, I spent some time breaking down what the title means. The family after what? After what? Now, it is talking about some of the difficulties, the struggles that a family will experience after an alcoholic has recovered as the result of the 12 steps. That's what we're talking about. And that is an important distinction, because if I am not recovered, I will relapse. Like, it is a ticking time bomb until I take that next drink. And one of the directions it's going to tell us to do, or it's not going to tell us to do, one of the directions it says, hey, we have a tendency to go, one of these two directions, one of those directions can be fatal if my alcoholism is untreated. So when we say, welcome, we're at the very bottom paragraph of page 125. So when we talk about at the beginning of recovery, we're not talking about the alcoholic is on step 1, 2, 3, or 4. We're talking about the alcoholic has recovered and is beginning this way of life. That is the context, and that context is important. So, as a rule, we'll take one of two directions. This is direction one. One, he may either plunge into a frantic attempt to get on his feet in business, so casual workaholism, that's what I'll call it, or, this is two, he will be so enthralled by his new life that he talks or thinks of little else. So we're either going to dive headlong into work and getting the money, hustling, getting the Benjamins. I ran out of synonyms. Rise and grind. I believe that's what they say on the gram. I don't know. You can tell I'm not on the Instagram. You can tell because I put a the before it. That's how you know. I'm also not on the Snapchat. So it's that idea that, like, I will throw myself into career and trying to get the material things back, or I'm going to dive headlong into spirituality, this way of life, that. And I'll let you know, more often than not, I don't see the second option. But it says in either case, certain family problems will arise. So there's going to be some difficulties. How do we navigate them? With these, we have had experience galore. And I want to point something out. Not opinions galore, not theories galore, not ideas galore, but experience. And again, this whole book is a book of experience. Not of opinions, not of beliefs, not of attitudes, not of theories. But it is the lived experience of each and every one of us who has recovered as the result of these 12 steps. So let's talk about what happens if we dive headlong into business. So this is one. It says, we think it dangerous if he rushes headlong at his economic problem. So that's the first direction. And even for the recovered alcoholic, it says we think it dangerous. When we talk about recovered alcoholic, just for those of you who might know or might not be so sure, what does Paige mean when she says recovered alcoholic? Or what does the book mean when Paige references it out of the book? What we're talking about is somebody who is living in the 10th step promises, where the obsession of the mind has been removed. And it is gone as the result of these 12 steps and continuing this work and these actions on a daily basis. That's what we're talking about. And for a recovered alcoholic, it is dangerous to dive headlong into work. So that's we're kicking off that direction with a warning. And again, it's dangerous for the recovered alcoholic. Without question, it is fatal for the unrecovered alcoholic. Or even if we don't want to be, but I mean, that's the truth. The allergy of the body makes this thing fatal. The obsession of the mind means that I'm going to go back to it despite that it will kill me. And we can hold our own experience up to this light. I know I threw myself into work. Listen, I wasn't really doing a whole lot of career stuff, but there were times I threw myself into work. And it was not effective. It could not keep me sober. And so what we're saying is it will not work if I'm not recovered. But even if I am, it's not a good direction to go. So it says the family will be affected also. Pleasantly at first, as they feel their money troubles are about to be solved. Wonderful news, that's great. And then not so pleasantly, as they find themselves neglected. And so we're starting to see the consequences. Dad may be tired at night and preoccupied by day. He may take small interest in the children and show irritation when reproved for his delinquencies. So what it's saying is the alcoholic, we got sober, all right, we're going to dive into work. And so we're focusing on work, all our time and energy and effort and emotion. So we're running ourselves ragged. I'm showing up to the family, tired, irritable, maybe a little overstimulated. I don't know about you guys. There's times in my life I just need to stare at the wall for 20 minutes. Just, and I'm just staring at the wall, and there's little kiddos running around and a partner and a spouse or a spouse who has emotional needs. And I'm not given any of that attention and love and care and service to my family. And so I'm showing up walled off, blocked off. And then my family will be, hey, Paige, you're supposed to be sober. Could we have some attention? You neglected us for the length of time that you were drinking. Is it not fair that I get some attention? And then I'm like, yeah. How dare you? How dare you reprove me for my delinquencies? Verbatim, that's how I start my arguments. I shall not be reproved for my delinquencies. I don't get into many fights. But yeah, that idea that I get sensitive and I get don't call me out. I'm doing my best. And it says, if not irritable, he may seem dull, boring, not gay and affectionate as the family would like him to be. So again, tired, burnt out, worn out, not interested. Mother may complain of inattention. They are all disappointed and often let him see it or let him feel it. Beginning with such complaints, a barrier arises. He is straining every nerve to make up for lost time. He is striving to recover fortune and reputation and feels he is doing very well. So this is the barrier. The family is saying, hey, I don't just want a jet ski, which would be very impractical in this landlocked Canadian province. But I don't just want a jet ski. I would like care and attention and love and interest in those moments of connection. And the alcoholic who's diving into work is saying, like, don't you see how hard I'm working? I'm working for you. And that creates the barrier where both sides feel unheard and unseen. And it says sometimes mother and children don't think so. Having been neglected and misused in the past, they think father owes them more than they are getting. And that's real. I neglected my family. I was unfair to my family. What alcoholic isn't trying to get money and all, we are not always good to our families. And why would they not want more? They want him to make a fuss over them. They expect him to give them the nice times they used to have before he drank so much, and to show contrition for what they suffered. And I'm going to throw something out. That's not unreasonable. It is not unreasonable to want a family member to care and show interest and to be remorseful for years or decades of emotional neglect. They're not out to lunch with that. And it says, but Dad doesn't give freely of himself. And why? In part because I'm trying to give at work and I'm drained emotionally, I'm drained mentally, and I'm busy kind of stuck in self, and I can't see that. Don't you see how hard I'm trying? I got sober. I did all this work to get sober, and I'm trying to get all this work. And again, that barrier. And it says resentment grows. And we can see that resentment, that is the number one offender. From resentment stems all form of spiritual disease. Now, we are human beings and we will have resentment, but we've got to pluck it root and branch as soon as we see it, because it'll grow. It says he becomes still less communicative, so withdrawing. Sometimes he explodes over a trifle. The family is mystified. They criticize, pointing out how he is falling down on his spiritual program. I will just say there's nothing worse than a non-alcoholic family member telling you to go work a program. God bless them. God bless them. They're not wrong. They're not wrong. But oh, goodness gracious, don't tell me that. I can't hear it. So we're seeing this resentment and this impasse, and this is the problem that will arise and often arises. And here's how we avoid it. So that is the problem that can happen, or some of the problems that we can see if I dive headlong into work and focusing on work after I am recovered. So here's what we can do. It says this sort of thing can be avoided. Both father and the family are mistaken. What? What? I just want to be an innocent little, I'm an innocent little angel over here. I've done nothing wrong. Calling me out all the time. Rude. So both father and family are mistaken, though each side may have some justification. So the family is justified in wanting love and care and attention and time and quality time and those moments of engagement. And of course, the alcoholic is justified in maybe wanting to go back to school or get a career or try to support the family financially. We're saying, like, hey, it's okay if you have those motives. That's okay. Welcome. We're on the very, very bottom of page 126, top of 128. And it says, it is of little use to argue and only makes the impasse worse. So if you guys remember in Two Wives where it's like, hey, we should never be angry. That's not to say we shut down our human emotions and we become like the Stepford Wives? I'm a little robot and I have no feelings. No, what we're saying is arguing doesn't work. And I will throw this out, not you guys. I know nobody here has ever fallen into argument, especially with family. And when you get criticized about something from your family and then you start arguing with them about it, it just sort of entrenches, I am right and I can't hear them. So let's not argue. That's not going to work. The family must realize that Dad, though marvelously improved, is still convalescing. So the family's track is to see that, yes, And this is one of the things that we see in the later chapters, is this non-dual consciousness where two things are true. And the two things are dramatic, powerful, spiritual awakenings. And we still sometimes don't put our socks in the laundry hamper. Like two things are true. Or we still sometimes put the toilet paper on the wrong direction. I want you to know Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, so we don't have an opinion on which way the toilet paper goes. But so that idea that it is true that we have had powerful spiritual experiences, and we are still human, and we are still fallible, and we are still growing. And it might seem like those things are opposite. And that's what I mean, that non-dual consciousness. A lot of times, I'm off on a tangent. Sorry, guys. A lot of times, but I'm telling you I'm on one, so I'll find my way back. Don't you worry. A lot of times we hear there are so many paradoxes in AA. And I'll tell you something. I don't think we have many paradoxes. I think we have things that are experiential. They are experienced to be understood. So to keep what I have, I've got to give it away. Doesn't make sense if I've not had it. And that was my experience. I would hear that and I'd be like, oh, yes, yes, yes. And I'm like, I don't get what you're talking about. But I'm not going to ask anyone, because then they're going to know I don't know. And I don't want the other alcoholics who are hanging out in a church basement chain smoking to think I'm uncool, because I got an ego and image maintenance. And this is one of those things that is experiential. Welcome. We're on page 127. We're right at the top of the page. That idea that I will have, if I do this thing and go after this thing, I will have a powerful spiritual experience. But if you've been coming to this study a while, you've heard me say, I can't stay well on one. I can't stay sober on one. No worries. Thank you so much for coming. Always so glad to have you. I can't stay well on one spiritual experience. I need more. I need to seek more. I need to grow more. And if I am become as white as the driven snow and pure and like little Miss Perfect Pants over here, then I won't have anywhere to grow. But those human struggles allow further growth, allow me to experience God more, and allow further awakenings. And that is how these two things work together to be true. And so that non-dual consciousness, where we realize that Dad, though marvelously improved, a miraculous spiritual awakening, is still convalescing. Now, what's interesting about the word convalescing is to convalesce is recovery from illness, so to recover. And convalescing is to be in the act of recovering. And this is one of the few places in the book it says recovering as opposed to recovered. Recovered. And this is one of the few places it says recovering. And I believe the reason why is because we're trying to point out to, in this place, in this part of the book, I believe the word convalescing is used because it's difficult for me to say and we just want to give me a hard time. I'm just kidding. But I believe the word convalescing is used as opposed to recovered or convalesce. Nope, I don't know how to make that past tense. Didn't think about that before I started saying it either. And I was really just going to push through, but I'm like, no, I don't know how to say it. But it is because we're pointing to this being a lifelong process. So that we are improved, but we need to continue to grow. So they should be thankful he is sober and to be a part of this world once more. Let them praise his progress. Let them remember that his drinking wrought all kinds of damage that may take long to repair. So the direction for the family is that idea of hey, let's pick our battles. Right now, let's encourage, let's support, let's remember hey, this person has had a complete 180 and they're not going to be perfect. It says, if they sense these things, I wanted to talk about, let them remember that his drinking wrought all kinds of damage, which may take long to repair. That ties into what we saw. Now we're going to pop over to step 9 here in a bit. but it ties into what we saw when we spoke about repairing our relationships with our family. Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. Now, we're going to give us directions on what the alcoholic has to do in this sort of situation, in this sort of impasse. But for the family, the direction is, hey, let's remember how hopeless the alcoholic was. Let's remember how awful that was. And let's encourage and let's support and put into context the situation. So if they sense these things, they will not take so seriously his periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy, which will disappear when there is tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. And you know what's interesting about that? Is it's not a promise in a traditional way. It's not and then I won't forget the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Woo! But it is an implied promise in the sense that I will have periods of crankiness. I will have periods of depression. I will have periods of apathy. Apathy is to be apathetic, not interested in doing things. We will have human moments, which is rude because I don't want to have feelings and emotions. Those are gross. No, thank you. I would like to just be a numb little robot, but that didn't work so well when I was drinking. Now did it? So we will be human and have those periods. And how do they disappear? They disappear when there is tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. Now we're going to see what the direction is for the alcoholic, but it is an important reminder, if I'm reading this book, these things apply to me. And so when it talks about tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding, let's make a note to see page 83 and page 118. So page 83 and page 11883. I just want to make sure I said it right. So let's pop over to page 83. We'll do that one first. 83. And where we're going to go is we're going to go to the very first paragraph on page 83. And it's literally what I was quoting. Yes, there's a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fit the bill at all. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. Their defects may be glaring, but chances are that our own actions are partially responsible, so we clean house with the family. This is the tie-in to page 127. It says, asking, and that is a prayer. Each morning in meditation, so I bring this to prayer and then I come to a meditative practice. So we have a meditative practice, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. And I talk about this because when I'm dealing with people in my life who are cranky, who are depressed or apathetic, I have a tremendous reservoir for empathy. But I'm a human being, and sometimes that runs dry. And I need a patience, a tolerance, a kindliness, and a love that is not my own. How do I show love to somebody that I'm frustrated with? How do I show love to somebody where it's hard? I think it was Thomas Merton who said our job is to love people, not question whether they're worthy. How do I do that? Because I can't do that on my own power, because I'm human and I'm judgy and I'm flawed. Shocker. And so I need that power, which is God, to flow through me. So I ask for that. And I sit in meditation, and it is a way, not an idea, a way. So it's like channeling that through me. And then let's pop over to page 118, where we're going to see how, the order of how this thing goes. Page 118, so it's going to be a second full paragraph. When it says, your husband knows he owes you more than sobriety. He wants to make good, make it right, to amend. Yet you must not expect too much. His ways of thinking and doing are the habits of years. Patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. And I need a connection with God for those to be the watchwords. I need that connection to share them with others. It says, show him these things in yourself, and they will be reflected back to you from him. So what do I need to do? I need to show up to my relationships with patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. And if I show up with those they will be reflected back. And I've got to show up with those first. I can't be like, wait a minute, I'm the alcoholic in the scenario on page 127. Family, show me tolerance. No. If we're at the study, what we're reading applies to us. We got to show them patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. And as we go back to page 127, we're going to see that the actions that we need to take are not so dissimilar. So it goes on to say, 127, first full paragraph, the head of the house, just to say the alcoholic, ought to remember that he is mainly to blame for what befell his home. Right. I've got to take accountability for my actions. Oh man, that's not cool. I don't want to do that. Right. It says he can scarcely square the account in his lifetime. So the amends that we make, and the context is in part financial, but also just all of it, like the real harms that we've caused, we might not ever be able to fully ever make it right, but our responsibility is to try consistently to make it right. It says, but he must see the danger of over-concentration on financial success. It is dangerous. Although financial recovery is on the way for many of us, not all of us, we found we could not place money first. For us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress. It never preceded, and this is important. Bill Wilson and Lois, it was when they were sober, they had a year where they moved like over 50 times. They were couch surfing. They were homeless in sobriety. Dr. Bob, he struggled financially. He was struggling when he was drinking, but I mean, he also continued to struggle in sobriety. I'm shocked that, an alcoholic proctologist wasn't like getting a lot of patients. Who wouldn't want that? Yikes. But these early co-founders, many of them were desperate financially and in dire financial straits. The economic situation of the 1930s, the Great Depression, and it's so financial recovery is on the way for many of us. And for many people, that's the case. But I cannot place money first. What needs to come first is God or a higher power, or the spirit of the universe. That's what needs to come first, because without that, I cannot stay sober. And it says, for us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress. It never preceded. Spiritual progress must come first. Now, some of you guys know I have not too many hills that I die upon, but one of the hills with which I shall die upon is that it is spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection, as opposed to progress, not perfection. Because how often do I confuse the two? How often do we as human beings confuse the two? And I think, I'm getting the job, I'm getting the relationship, getting the car, getting maybe the tickets paid down, maybe got the interlock device so that you can drive the car, the DUI courses, getting all of that stuff done. And I think I'm progressing, but none of that has the power to keep me sober. Spiritual growth is the name of the game. So not just a spiritual awakening, but continuing to grow spiritually. That's what we're trying to do. So that material progress follows spiritual progress. I cannot put that first. And so it's an important thing, just because how often have we worked with sponsees or newcomers who are like, no, I can't work. I just got to get a job and then I can work the steps, or I just got to pay off this and then I can work the steps. But it's not until I have a spiritual awakening that I continue to grow and deepen that I am able to stay sober, and I can't keep a job very well if I'm drinking. At least that's been my experience. I don't know about yours. All right, so it goes on. since the home has suffered more than anything else. See, if I am the tornado, the alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. If I am a tornado, I have caused more harm and more pain and more suffering in my home than I have anywhere else. I've hurt those that were closest to me. It is well that a man exert himself there. So that's where I need to be really practicing the program, which is to say, actively utilizing the tangible actions of the 12 steps, showing up in that spirit of service. It says, he is not likely to get far in any direction if he fails to show unselfishness and love under his own roof. So I need to bring that unselfishness. I need to bring that love to the home. But I also want to point out, I need to have that spiritual awakening to bring it there at a consistent level. And I talk about that just because when we're new, sometimes it's like, oh, but I got to spend time with family. And I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying get recovered so that we can do that. Because if I have not had a spiritual awakening as the result of the 12 steps, it's like I'm in the ICU. You know, we're not worried about who's going to carve the turkey. If we're in the ICU, who's going to make the mashed potatoes, you know, for the family get together? No, we've got to triage. But when we get stable, when we get to that place, then we can make the spaghetti or do whatever. Like, that's the order. So I've got to get well so that I can bring that wellness. I can bring that love under my own roof to my own family. And I love that it talks about unselfishness and love, which are 2 out of the 4 absolutes. Just gonna throw that sneaky little Oxford group tie in. So the Oxford group, they had these principles that were known as the absolutes, and those were those like ideals that, knowing that everybody would fall short, that they were striving towards. And absolute unselfishness was one of them. Am I absolutely unselfish in all of my actions? Knowing we'll fall short, but if I'm there striving towards there, I'm going to be closer to God's will. Am I absolutely loving in all of my actions? Maybe they only gave us the 2 of them because it's like, those are 2 big ones, especially for family, you know? And I can't do that on my own power. I need God to flow through me. So the other one is absolute honesty. Now, I will say sometimes in AA, I've heard us misunderstand what we're talking about with honesty. I can't tell you how many times I'll do a share and then somebody will be like, I don't really like you. I'm just being honest. And AA tells me to be honest. I'm like, that's not what that means. We're talking about like that honesty tempered with the unselfishness and the love, that sort of honesty. But also that purity, which is to say purity of motives. So I'm showing up to my family in that way. And then I love this, because this is another example of the book meeting us where we're at. Because you can almost hear me reading it, and it's like, I've got to show unselfishness and love under my own roof. And you can almost hear me go, but you don't understand. My family is difficult. And it says, we know there are difficult wives and families, so it's meeting us right where we're at. I'm going to take us where we need to go. Here's where it is. But the man who is getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. Oh, calling me out, right? They're difficult. They probably wouldn't be so difficult if you hadn't been a tornado in their lives. Go show up unselfishly and lovingly with your family. So it says, as each member of a resentful family begins to see his shortcomings and admits them to others, he lays the basis for helpful discussion. And I just want to talk about that for a second. My responsibility is not to see your shortcomings and admit your shortcomings to you and point them out. My job is to look for mine. And how do I look for mine? Well, the first time I start to look for my shortcomings is in step 4. And I continue that process in step 10. And I continue that process in step 11 in evening review. So I've got to be continuing to have that self-assessment of inventory. to look at myself and look for my shortcomings. And then it says admits them to others. Of course, what do we do with inventory? I've got to take it to somebody. I've got to share it to somebody. And in this case, if I'm with family, my shortcomings have absolutely been harming my family. So I make amends for them. So we see this continuation of 4 through 9. And obviously, if I see it and I share it and I go to make amends, I want to have it removed. And we see that steps 4 through 9 in step 10, and we see those steps 4 through 9 in the evening review portion of step 11. And so here's the thing is I've got to admit my shortcomings first. That's the order. Because a lot of times, I know you guys are always good about this, but for me, I sometimes fall into, but how come he never does? Or how come they never do? They don't have the skills or the tools. And it is those of us with the tools, we have the responsibility to use them. And unfortunately, if you're hanging out, and I'm so glad you are, we got the tools, we got to use them. And here's the thing, if I admit my defects, that helps other people see how they can do that themselves. So if I want a healthy relationship, I have to start there. And so it says, he can, and in so doing, he lays the basis for helpful discussion. These family talks will be constructive if they can be carried on without heated argument, self-pity, self-justification, or resentful criticism. Clearly, we're going to need some God in that, because I have a hard time on my own. But that's the thing. If I show up in that way, it will be constructive. It says, little by little, mother and children will see they ask too much, and father will see he gives too little. And that is that idea that we're going to see the truth, which is that, yes, there are some things that only one human being can't be all things to all people. And when I was focusing headlong into getting on my feet financially, I wasn't even trying. And we find now I'm not a huge fan of the word balance, and actually we'll be talking about that here in a bit. But the reason I'm not a fan of the word balance is because it puts me at the center. I always think about like a waiter serving tables. And if I'm got all my plates, I'm trying to balance my plates, but that's got me at the center, and I ought not be at the center of my life. And so I've got to find that God-centered path. And that God-centered path so often begins when I'm willing to take my own inventory and see where I've been wrong, and make amends where I've caused harm. Now, this is a powerful principle. It says giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle. And this is powerful. When I show up to family, to friendships, to life, to AA, to other areas, if I show up focusing on what I can give rather than what I get, it is incredible what happens. You see, when I'm focusing on what I can get, I show up to life with this, what about me? And wouldn't you know it, I begin to operate from scarcity, because it's never enough. See, if I'm showing up to life for a sense of approval and a sense of affection and a sense of love, I might even get those things from you. But it lasts only an instant, and I feel worse than I did before. And I'm chasing it like I was chasing that next drink. It's never enough. But when I seek to have my needs met by God, and I show up to a situation and I'm bringing love, I begin to see that love is abundant. It was always there, and it is abundant. There's no scarcity of it. And I bring tolerance. I see that is abundant. I bring kindness, and I see that is abundant. And I begin to overflow with those things. And I've got to focus on giving. And it's one that, there have been times in my life when it is when life is really frickin' hard and life is really frickin' unfair. And one of the things that I've found to be helpful is to give that which I don't feel that I have. If I feel like I'm unloved, go love somebody. If I feel that people have just been so unkind to me, go be kind to somebody who needs it. You know what I mean? Go give that, and it sort of shakes me back into reality, and I see that it is truly abundant. And that is powerful. And it works. It really does work. just having a day, you feel lonely and isolated, nobody loves you, go message people and let them know that God loves them and you love them and you're grateful for them. And it is incredible how God moves in that. Just that's been my experience, how often God has moved in my life when I do that. And of course, we've got to do that with family. With family, that's when I tend to have my old ideas and my old wounds and, all those buttons that family will push buttons like nobody else. It's because they installed them, they got the manual, they figured out how to turn the beeping back, the reverse beeping on the scooter of my life. They turned that back on, and I got to figure out how to turn that off. I need inventory to do that. Less dog hair and writing columns. That's a joke. So that's what we're talking about. So now what we get into is the second direction that we focus, that an alcoholic who has recovered is likely to go to. It says, assume on the other hand, so we're going to dive headlong into spirituality. Assume on the other hand that Father has had at the outset a stirring spiritual experience. So very quickly, that powerful spiritual awakening. Overnight, as it were, he is a different man. So that profound change. He becomes a religious enthusiast. So just so excited about spirituality. It doesn't even have to be religion, but just after seeking and seeking and seeking, he is unable to focus on anything else. As soon as his sobriety begins to be taken as a matter of course, the family may look at their strange new dad with apprehension, like, what's this about? And then irritation. Oh, get over it. That sort of vibe. There is talk about spiritual matters morning, noon, and night. And I'm bad for that. Listen, I'll cop to it. I'm bad for it. I will turn anything and everything into a spiritual metaphor. You guys know. You see me do it. But I am bad for that. Morning, noon, and night. Well, it's good I'm not a morning person, so at least it's noon and night. Cut down on my spiritual metaphors. All right. He may demand that the family find God in a hurry, or exhibit amazing indifference to them and say he is above worldly considerations, which I do think I need to throw that into conversation more. Paige, could you help me with this? I am sorry, I am above worldly considerations. That's just how I show up to life. You could see why that's not going to land really well. He may exhibit amazing indifference to them and say it's above worldly considerations. He may tell mother, who has been religious all her life, that she doesn't know what it's all about, and she had better get his brand of spirituality while there is yet time. And you can just see that. I'm gonna give this guy so much the benefit of the doubt, but we can see just a little bit, some spiritual ego, some just a scotch. But I do think it comes from that, I talk about this. One of the most surefire signs of a spiritual awakening is the desire to go help somebody else. When it's that come, you got to experience this. It's the coolest thing. You have no idea how great it is to make amends. And they're like, well, no, that doesn't sound appealing. No, thank you. Ooh. Oh. So it says, when Father takes this tack, the family may react unfavorably. They may be jealous of a God who has stolen Dad's affections. And that same jealousy we saw in the leading into financial and work and that sort of stuff. Not giving the family time and attention. That's what we're seeing is a bit of a common denominator. While grateful he drinks no more, they may not like the idea that God has accomplished the miracle where they failed. And that's a human feeling. When you love somebody and you watch them go through the horrors of alcoholism and they get sober, there is often that nagging thought in the back of someone's head of, why wasn't my love enough? Why wasn't I enough? And that is so human and so understandable. And what we can take, there's a couple of things. One is that empathy. We can take that empathy and that understanding for our loved ones who might be feeling that way. But also it is a reminder that God is who does the heavy lifting. God, the higher power, the creator, the spirit of the universe, that is what keeps us sober. So God accomplished the miracle, and it says they often forget Father was beyond human aid. And again, an important reminder is that if I have this illness, I am beyond human power. Human power is not as sufficient to keep me sober. They may not see why their love and devotion did not straighten him out. That is not, and which is human and understandable, that like my love wasn't enough, and it can feel heartbreaking. It says, Dad is not so spiritual after all, they say. If he means to right his past wrongs, why all this concern for everyone in the world, but his family? What about his talk that God will take care of him? They suspect Father is a bit balmy. And so we're going to leave it there, but I'll just wrap it up with this idea that that's a fair criticism. If you're going to be so concerned with setting right your wrongs, why don't you make amends to the family and give me that attention? That's a fair criticism. And it is understandable as a family who has had to sort of navigate the alcoholism and the, no job, the chaos of alcoholism. When you have the alcoholic who gets sober and is like, God will take care of you, which I do think is true. He's not wrong. The alcoholic's not wrong. But it is understandable that a family would still feel that that's insufficient. And that perhaps what we'll get to is the alcoholic can let God flow through them and show up and be of love and service to the family. But they suspect that Father is a bit balmy. Father's lost his marbles. Well, in the next part of the book, we'll talk about how we find those marbles. So I'll stop the recording and we can pop it over for the Q&A.